Hey, welcome to a new video. When it comes to Disney movies, there are entire generations that grew up with those recurring fairy tales. Prince meets princess, they fall in love, defeat cunning villains, and then live happily ever after. But what if we told you that the original Disney stories were much darker? Today we'll show you 20 real Disney endings you didn't know about.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video. Number 20.
When it comes to Disney classics, The Sword in the Stone is often overshadowed by titles like 101 Dalmatians and The Jungle Book, all released in the same year. But The Sword in the Stone has a darker story than you might have thought. While most associate the Disney film with the legendary King Arthur and Excalibur, it turns out that Tuscany, Italy has its own intriguing tale of a sword embedded in a stone. However, this sword, a relic from the Middle Ages, was not pulled from the stone by a noble king, but rather thrust into the stone by a saint. Once a prosperous knight, Galgano had a revelation in 1180, when he decided to abandon his lavish lifestyle and embrace the teachings of Jesus. Seeking solace and spiritual enlightenment, he became a hermit. He received visions from the Archangel Michael on a hilltop, where Michael instructed him to renounce all his worldly possessions. One night, his horse led him to the same hill, where he then thrust his sword into the stone. As you enter the chapel, you're greeted by the chilling sight of mummified hands and remains of a thief who dared to pull the sword from the stone but was unsuccessful. It's also said that this audacious intruder was ultimately devoured by a pack of wild wolves.
Number 19.
When you think of the Disney movie Hercules, you might think of Hades with his fiery hair and dancing muses. However, the myths are much darker. We know the film revolves around the legendary figure Hercules, accompanied by his loyal companions Pegasus and Phil, and his great love Megara. In the story, Hercules' mother, Hera, is depicted as a living figure, while in Greek myths she tried to kill Heracles during his infancy. In the film, Hercules willingly gives up his immortality to be with Megara on Earth, resulting in a long and happy life. In contrast to the myths, the movie portrays Heracles being driven to madness by Hera, leading to the tragic murders of Megara and their children. After this devastating act, Heracles sought guidance at the Oracle of Delphi, which advised him to seek out his cousin Eurystheus. Eurystheus gave Heracles 10 labors as penance for his gruesome deeds. These labors included the famous task of capturing the Nemean lion.
Number 18.
First and foremost, it's essential to dispel the misconception about her name. Born around 1596, Pocahontas was not her true name. In reality, she was called Amanute or Mataka. She was the daughter of the leader of multiple lands that would later become Jamestown, claimed by early English colonists. And she wasn't 18 when the English arrived, as depicted in the Disney film. She was actually 10 years old. In an attempt to weaken the indigenous population, the English devised a plot to kidnap her. Pocahontas was forced into a marriage with one of her captors, John Rolfe. She later died from a disease, either cholera, smallpox, tuberculosis, or the flu, and never returned home. Representatives of the Powhatan tribe on the ship with Pocahontas later told her father that she had been poisoned.
Number 16.
The movie Frozen represents an original story, loosely inspired by Hans Christian Andersen's The Snow Queen. The story revolves around the timeless conflict between good and evil, where the Snow Queen is the undisputed villain. Published in 1845, the Snow Queen introduces us to Kai, a boy whose heart and eye have fragments of a broken magical mirror made by trolls. Transformed by the shards of the mirror, Kai goes to live with the Snow Queen. Meanwhile, his companion Gerda embarks on a courageous quest to find him. Through a series of thrilling adventures, Gerda eventually finds Kai and frees him. They embrace, and the power of Gerda's love proves to be his salvation, as her warm tears dissolve his icy heart and destroy the splinter within it. As a result, Kai's tears wash the shards from his eye, restoring his joy and vitality, and they live happily ever after.
Number 15.
Alice Pleasance Liddell is the person behind Lewis Carroll's iconic works, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Through the Looking Glass. Unlike many fairy tales based on dark stories, it's the background that led to the writing of the story that's more controversial. Alice was only 4 years old when Charles Dodgson, the author using a pseudonym, Lewis Carroll, became a close family friend. It's worth noting that Charles' relationship with Alice was unconventional by today's standards, and would be strongly disapproved of and condemned. There's also the fact that delving deeper into the story reveals that Alice as a character experiences hallucinations and shows signs of personality disorders. The White Rabbit also exhibits symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder, while the enigmatic Cheshire Cat seems to embody elements of schizophrenia.
Number 14.
The Little Mermaid and The Real Mermaid might as well be different stories. That's how dark the original tale is. Both feature the same character, a mythical 14-year-old creature in search of true love. But here's where the original deviated from the Disney fairy tale. Seeking help from Ursula, the sea witch, the Little Mermaid makes a desperate deal. her voice and tongue in exchange for legs. However, every step she takes on land is excruciatingly painful, as if she's walking on sharp knives. To alleviate her suffering, she must often return to the sea to cool her feet, which is the only time she can see her family. Her survival depends on winning the affection of the prince, who keeps her close but offers her only a small bed outside his bedroom door. In a heart-wrenching twist, the prince marries another woman, crushing the Little Mermaid's dreams. The Sea Witch then presents her with a deadly choice, her life for the princess. Though she agrees, she ultimately cannot bring herself to carry out the deed. As a result, she dissolves into foam. Her spirit, however, ascends and gains a soul, but only after performing acts of goodness for 300 years. Even the Little Mermaid's sisters were not innocent in Hans Christian Andersen's version. They boasted of their dark deeds to lure sailors to their doom in the treacherous waters.
Number 13.
Sundiata Keita, the inspiration behind one of Disney's beloved classics, ended up as the ruler of the Mali Empire, the largest empire in West Africa. From 1235 to 1255, the rule extended from the Atlantic coast to the Niger River. Sundiata's lineage can be traced back to King Nar Magan Kanate, a real-life figure resembling Mufasa. According to prophecy, King Nar's union with an ugly woman would produce a son destined to become the greatest king in history. Fascinated by the potential, the king chose Sagalin Kedjau, nicknamed the Buffalo Woman, as his second wife. She gave birth to Sundiata, who was born disabled. Later in his life, he could walk, but before King Nar could pass the throne to him, he died under mysterious circumstances, fueling suspicions of foul play. Meanwhile, the kingdom descended into chaos when it was conquered by King Somato. During his exile, Sundiata adeptly formed alliances with the King of Mema and other local rulers throughout Africa. Ultimately, he returned to his father's empire, defeated King Somato, and assumed the title of Mansa, meaning king or emperor in Mandinka. Intriguingly, people actually gave him another name, the Lion King.
Number 12.
The Fox and the Hound is a classic tale of friendship, loyalty, and the complexity of societal expectations. It revolves around the unlikely bond between a dog named Copper and a fox named Todd. These two characters form a deep connection despite their differences during their early days of companionship. The story is based on the novel The Fox and the Hound by Daniel P. Mannix, published in 1967. In this dark and poignant story, the author explores the lives of Copper and Todd as they navigate the challenges of their respective roles in a human-dominated world. As youngsters, Copper and Todd are inseparable and blissfully unaware of the societal division that will soon tear them apart. However, as they grow older, their natural instincts and the expectations placed on them by their human guardians come into conflict. Copper the dog is trained to track and hunt foxes, including his former friend Todd. Meanwhile, Todd the fox is seen as a threat to the livestock and deemed as a nuisance by the humans. The pressure to conform to their predetermined roles strains their friendship and forces them into a bitter rivalry. The story takes a tragic turn as Todd, pursued by Copper and another dog named Chief, kills Chief, Copper's companion. This act ultimately leads to Todd's downfall, as he exhausts himself trying to evade Copper's relentless pursuit. In a heartbreaking conclusion, Copper is ultimately shot by his own owner.
Number 11.
Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame is already one of Disney's darker stories, but apparently the original tale is quite darker. While many believe that Quasimodo was based on a real person, Victor Hugo's novel and interpretation of the Hunchback were primarily based on folklore and legend. Inspired by the novel of the same name, the film revolves around the story of Quasimodo, who grows up within the Notre Dame Cathedral, under the guardianship of Archdeacon Frollo. Both Quasimodo and Frollo develop feelings for the enchanting Esmeralda, leading to a complex love triangle. In the climax of the film, Quasimodo confronts Frollo, inadvertently causing his downfall by pushing him off the cathedral's roof. While this already deviates from Disney's unusual storytelling, Victor Hugo's original novel takes an even darker turn for the characters. In Hugo's narrative, Frollo cunningly accuses Esmeralda of attempted murder, resulting in her wrongful death sentence by hanging. Quasimodo's actions remain somewhat similar as he pushes Frollo off the roof. However, the act of retribution is motivated by Frollo's callous laughter at Esmeralda's execution. In the aftermath, unable to let go of his love for Esmeralda, Quasimodo seeks solace at her grave, and eventually perishes from starvation.
Number 10.
In the Disney film Aladdin, the self-proclaimed street rat stumbles upon a hidden lamp and frees a mystical blue genie, after which he attempts to win the heart of Princess Jasmine. The story of Aladdin is part of a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales known as 1001 Nights from 1712. The original story is attributed to Antoine Galland, a French translator. He claimed to have received the story from Hana Diab, a Syrian man who based Aladdin on his own life experiences. Similar to Aladdin, Hana aspired to own a market stall and desired higher social status. Hana eventually encountered a French explorer named Paul Lucas, who went on a treasure hunt similar to Aladdin's journey set in ancient China. Aladdin's father succumbed to shame due to Aladdin's lack of ambition and association with street children. There are also 2 genies, one from a lamp and the other from a ring. 3 villains thwart Aladdin's dreams, including one who kidnaps Jasmine and takes her to North Africa. The Sultan then threatens to behead Aladdin for failing to protect Jasmine. So Aladdin foils Jasmine's impending wedding by abducting her fiancé and locking him in a dungeon until the marriage is cancelled.
Number 9.
It's widely known that the timeless tale of Tangled has captivated the imaginations of many. The earliest known version of the enchanting story dates back to the year 1600 and was written by the Italian author Giambattista Basile. In this version, Rapunzel is sold as a baby to a monster due to her mother's theft in a garden. However, the version of the fairy tale by the brothers Grimm, published in 1857, takes a darker turn. Rapunzel, who has never before encountered a man, is seduced and becomes pregnant by the prince. When the prince returns to visit, the cunning witch tricks him into climbing the tower using Rapunzel's cut hair, only to let him fall into sharp thorns, rendering him blind. He then wanders aimlessly through the forest. Rapunzel eventually gives birth to 2 twins, and the prince finds her again, and they live happily ever after. Yet the origins of the true story goes even deeper into the shadows. Instead of an evil witch holding a beautiful maiden captive, the abductor is none other than the girl's own controlling father.
Number 8.
The earliest version of Cinderella can be traced back to ancient Greek, Chinese, and Egyptian folklore, with variations found in different cultures and eras. One of the most well-known versions is Charles Perrault's French fairy tale, Cinderella, published in 1697. His version introduced elements like the fairy godmother, glass slippers, and the pumpkin carriage, which have become iconic. However, even Charles' version is not without its dark elements. In his tale, Cinderella's stepsisters, driven by jealousy, cruelly mutilate their own feet in a desperate attempt to fit into the glass slippers. The climax of the story involves the stepsisters being punished by having their eyes pecked out by doves, serving as a cautionary moral for their wickedness. The brothers Grimm, known for their collection of fairy tales, also presented their own version of Cinderella in 1812. In the Grimm brothers story, the stepsisters also cut off parts of their feet, resulting in a bloody mess.
Number 7.
In J.M. Barrie's play and subsequent book, Peter Pan is depicted as a mischievous and eternally young boy who lives in Neverland, a magical world where children never grow up. While Peter Pan is often portrayed as a hero and a symbol of eternal youth, his character in the original story has complex and villainous qualities. One of the disturbing aspects of the original Peter Pan story is his attitude towards the Lost Boys, the group of boys who live with him in Neverland. According to the story, Peter Pan would recruit boys who were lost and bring them to Neverland to join his group of lost boys. However, as the boys grew older, Peter would develop a distaste for their aging and banish them from the group. In the original story, it suggested that Peter Pan would either forget about the banished lost boys or even, more disturbingly, return to their homes and secretly kill them.
Number 6.
Tarzan, created by author Edgar Rice Burroughs, first appeared in the novel Tarzan of the Apes in 1912. The original story of Tarzan differs significantly from the more sanitized and adventurous Disney films that followed. In the novel, Tarzan's parents, John and Alice Clayton, are abandoned on the African coast after their ship is attacked. They build a treehouse and have a son, John Clayton III. However, tragedy strikes when both parents are tragically killed by a roaming tribe of apes. This sets the stage for Tarzan's upbringing in the African jungle. The portrayal of African tribes and characters in the original Tarzan story has been the subject of criticism and controversy. Burroughs' story drew inspiration from various sources, including classical tales and mythology, to shape the story of Tarzan. One of the references he often mentioned in the story of Romulus and Remus, the mythical twin brothers raised by a she-wolf who later founded the city of Rome. Burroughs eventually incorporated the elements of the original Wild Child story into the character of Tarzan in the Disney film.
Number 5.
Mulan, a legendary figure in Chinese folklore, has a story with dark origins and a rich background. The original story of Mulan can be traced back to ancient Chinese ballads and poems, particularly the Ballad of Mulan from the 4th or 5th century. In the original tale, Mulan stays in the war for as long as 12 years. However, the reality was 100 times darker, especially for her mother. When her father had fallen in battle, she was forced to never remarry to preserve their household. Mulan would have been forced to marry to save her family, as the law at the time dictated the girls had to marry at a young age. During the Wei dynasty in which Mulan was believed to have lived, it was also common for women to suffer abuse at the hands of their husbands and families.
Number 4.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is radically different in the original story compared to the Disney film. The queen's jealousy is a central theme in the original tale, and her obsession with being the fairest in the land drives her to extreme measures. She orders the huntsman to kill Snow White and bring back her heart, showcasing the queen's ruthless pursuit of beauty and power. Various methods she uses include a corset that strangles her, a poisoned comb, and finally the iconic poisoned apple. In the original story, the queen meets a gruesome end as a punishment for her wickedness. At Snow White's wedding, the queen is forced to dance in red-hot iron shoes until she dies. There is also a theory that suggests Snow White's story may have been inspired by real-life events, involving a countess named Margaret von Waldeck. According to the story, Margaret, who lived in 16th century Germany, was allegedly poisoned at a young age by her own stepmother to secure a political marriage.
Number 3.
The origin and background of The Jungle Book contain both dark and adventurous elements. The Jungle Book is a collection of stories written by Rudyard Kipling, first published in 1894. The stories were also inspired by ancient Indian texts. One of the notable dark elements in The Jungle Book is the character Shere Khan, the fearsome tiger. Shere Khan is portrayed as a ruthless and cunning predator who instills fear in other animals. His presence adds tension and danger to the stories as he seeks to eliminate Mowgli, the human child raised by wolves. Bill Peet, who worked on the original script, had conceived during the writing that Mowgli would be enslaved by Louie to teach him how to make fire. The ending would have been Buldeo the hunter trying to set the jungle on fire before being killed by Shere Khan the tiger, but Mowgli takes out the tiger with the hunter's gun.
Number 2.
In the case of Sleeping Beauty, Charles Perrault's version, titled The Sleeping Beauty in the Wood, contains darker elements. Here's some notable differences between Charles' story and the Disney version. In Charles' version, the princess is cursed to prick her finger on a spinning wheel and die. In the Disney film, however, the curse is modified so that she falls into a deep sleep. Eventually, the entire kingdom falls into a deep sleep lasting 100 years. In Charles' story, it's not Prince Charming who wakes Sleeping Beauty with a kiss. Instead, he finds her asleep and becomes so obsessed with her beauty that he assaults her. The princess eventually awakens and she gives birth to 2 children, and one of the babies accidentally sucks out the enchanted splinter. The original story concludes with a darker ending, in which the prince's mother is an ogress who attempts to eat Sleeping Beauty and her children. Eventually, the ogress is killed and the story ends happily.
Number 1.
The original story of Pinocchio is titled The Adventures of Pinocchio, written by Italian author Carlo Collodi in 1883. Although Jiminy Cricket is a prominent figure in Disney's version, the character of Jiminy Cricket in the original story is called the Talking Cricket. Pinocchio, frustrated by the cricket's advice, throws a hammer at him and accidentally kills him. As a result of his misdeeds, Pinocchio is more severely punished in the original story. For example, when he visits the land of toys, he turns into a donkey due to his indulgence and disobedience. In the original story, Pinocchio also falls asleep, with his feet too close to the stove, causing them to burn off. However, they are later replaced with new feet. At the end of the story, Pinocchio is hanged from a tree by his enemies, the fox and the cat. What's your favorite Disney movie, and which Disney movie has surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen, or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.